am today with Debbie holding onto the camera again, doing a quick overview how I actually quilted version 3 of my rendition of this quilt. The very first time I made it, I didn't know what to do. I started quilting, didn't like it, and I actually tore it apart, put it in the closet for at least 6 or 7 months, and then came back and looked at it again. What I'm going to suggest that you do is take the cover of your pattern and a pencil and use that as your template to map out what you want to do for quilting. But in this video, I'm just going to go through the approach that I took with the quilt and some suggestions. The one thing I learned is that it's really important to start in the center of your quilt to quilt. The one thing that I suggest is that you only do one vertical line of stitching in the ditch to anchor the vertical direction and not the horizontal, because what I find happening, no matter how good you are and how much the tension of your machine is fine, you'll end up coming to that center line and having your fabric bunch. So that's my key thing. I do not, for the most part, start at the outside of my quilt and quilt in. I do a lot of stopping and starting, which people may or may not like, but I prefer to not have to keep on rotating the quilt the whole time, because as we know, fabric is fluid, and because we have large open spaces, I find that I have more difficulty keeping the quilt stationed or stable than I do if I start working from the center out. When I got to version 3, I quickly determined, after I thought I would do a whole bunch of straight lines around Canada 150, that was very boring, so I took it out. Yes, I'm good at ripping it out. And I put in mountains, and this is the first line I would suggest you taking your pen and drawing it out. About 1/3 down from the top, I came with a nice curving line, which you'll be able to do with your walking foot with your marking devices, which I'm going to talk about in my next session about marking up the quilt, specifically on the quilt. I reflected the triangles and the flying geese to give the impression of trees, and then I did some straight lines to give the trunks of the tree. The things you're going to have to watch out for, you've got 3 different shapes, 2 maple leaves and the Canada 150 text that you're going to have to work around. I echoed each one of the maple leaves, and I also took my straight stitching line to about 1/2 inch from all the text. After, I'm just going to draw in the rest of my mountains. I would have continued on like this with some wavy lines. But I did continue the lines of the tree because I would do straight line stitching using these as your registration lines, but I will work over that a bit more. Right now I'm just talking about layout. I found that you've got 3 major areas. The top part of the tree, then this section in here, and you're going to have to work something like this, get your flow. And then I divide it into pretty much the third kind of relationship. Okay, and I just would draw another line, and then I started making waves by coming up against the hills, the mountains, the lines, and the trees. It's the general idea of trying to keep it in the Canada